Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. I wish I could say I waited until 3 o'clock because it's Good Friday, and the even the lapsed Catholic in me knows that one should set aside those 3 hours for deep contemplation about things, about where we are in the world and our spirit. But no, I was watching Senator Chris Van Hollen coming back, and I was wondering when is he going to say something? When is he going? It's because he was en route from El Salvador after seeing Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and we learned a bunch of things at that press conference. Like Abrego Garcia is not in the badass notorious prison. He's not the one for terrorists. He's in a lesser prison, so that's good. And Abrego Garcia is not. I mean, he's more than just, in custody. He is well. He was in street clothes. We saw that in social media, and we saw Donald Trump attack that. So we're going to talk about all that today because this is a crisis. I don't know how you felt. I mean, if you've listened to some other shows I've done this week, I've talked about America being in its new AA period. AA? American autocracy, American authoritarianism. That's where we are today, and all because of one man, Donald Trump. Who, I mean, if you look at other presidents have said, "Okay, I lost, but for the good of the country, we're gonna, stay together. We're gonna become united." Previous presidents did that. I mean, Richard Nixon. The Watergate tapes. Court order came down. He gave up the tapes. He resigned, later pardoned. But there's always a sense of a good of the country, the common good. I don't get that sense with Donald Trump. And it should concern us all. I mean, I really get a kind of queasy feeling whenever I pick up the news and try to figure out, well, where are we going to get hit from this time, right? Is it going to be, immigration? Is it going to be, climate change? Is it going to be, he's going to revere the coal miners and, pollute the air? What's he going to do next? I mean, that's what these first, I guess it's 90 days, right? We're not quite to 100 days. But that benchmark of the first 100 days has been, it's just been incredible how democracy has taken it on the chin, and I don't know how it can survive. So I noticed that today is also the 250th anniversary. Besides being Good Friday, it's the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. And if we could update Paul Revere's message to the world, it's not one if by land, two if by sea. No. It's not the British are coming, one if by land, two if by... The message of Paul Revere is one if by land, two if by Trump. The threat to the United States is real. That's my feeling. Let's bring up my friend, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, Professor Emeritus, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University. Hello, Dan.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Well,
Good
it is
Friday.
Good Friday. It's also the anniversary of Paul Revere's 250th Midnight Ride.
Yeah, well, there were two other individuals that were also writing that evening, and they don't get as much credit, though.
Oh, yeah. And was one of them a Filipino?
I don't know. It's possible.
If
it's
not,
possible
we're not
he might have been a mixed race. That's right. There could have been a mixed race Filipino. Okay, but, and that would be because of the possibility that they were of jockey size and therefore fast.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I believe that if we could update Paul Revere's message, it would be one if by land, two if by Trump, and we are being threatened. I mean, am I being?
Yeah, but where's our Concord? You know,
Uh, we don't have. Well, are the Democrats? That's the
no,
thing.
no.
I mean,
They're
who
still
is it?
demonstrated organizationally. They're still demonstrating weakness. Okay, because there is not an organized unison, right,
Yeah,
behind specific issues, but you do have a few, right,
yeah,
particularly among the senators, particularly those that aren't going to be up for election
yeah.
next year, right?
Well,
Who are taking stronger positions, and they're
well,
articulated position.
yeah,
That's just as important. It has to be an articulated position.
well,
It can't be general comments, about democracy and values and principles and all that. It
because
has to be very specific.
Americans don't get that, right? Is that the point?
They get it as a concept, but it's not something that they'll act on. That's the
Right.
point.
All
What
right,
what makes them act? Okay.
all right. So we saw when Senator Cory Booker gave his, record-breaking speech, and then we had
25 hours. Yeah.
the hands-off rally, and all the senators who helped him, they're out there speaking out. Most of them Democrats.
Yeah.
There are a handful of there are some Republicans now who are coming forward trying to stop the tariffs, but I mean, I'm just saying that when I was referring to one if by land, two if by Trump, the Trump has been given orders by the judicial branch to return Abrego Garcia, and he's not doing it. That is a challenge to our Constitution, and that's sort of where we are. That's why I bring it up. I mean, yes, you're right. The senators, the Democrats have to come up with a better plan, but
Well, Trump is Trump is trying to distance himself from this specific issue. Okay, the Kilmore Obrego Garcia issue,
yeah,
and he's saying you gotta. I will do what the court says. That's one thing, and then the other thing that he says is I'm not really in on this. It's up to the lawyers. You have to consult with DOJ. So now he, in the past few minutes, he might have said, and certainly did it yesterday, that he's the man in command. He
right,
loves to enunciate, right, his
right.
command, that he's in control, he's the guy, and then he'll turn around and show this face, which is, wait a minute, it's the people who are in charge of the area that have to explain what's going on and what kind of position they're taking. That is a show of weakness, okay? And I'm very happy to see it.
Yeah,
I'm very
well,
happy to see it.
but he's using today. He said, "Hey, look, you know, I." He said that Trump was responsible for bringing those criminals to justice and getting them out of the country. He said, "It's me. It's not the judges who were elected to do that." So I think he's taking some responsibility. But if he is, then it's time for the people to recognize what he's doing. What he's doing is really challenging the
Yes, he is.
constitutional rights of
Yeah.
all Americans. All Americans.
It's called contempt. He is behaving in a contemptuous fashion. The thing is, he's trying to avoid that direct accusation by saying it's really the DOJ and it's the lawyers. Okay,
Yeah,
but one lawyer actually told the truth a couple of weeks ago, and
he
he
got
got
fired.
pulled off.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's fired, but he's no longer responsible for representing the Trump administration on these issues.
yeah. The reports are that not only was he pulled off and put on leave, but that he was in fact fired. So, but the point is, the one guy who tells the truth in the Justice Department, and
And the several others who have resigned because
yeah,
they refuse to act in the manner demanded by other people within the departments that have now been appointed by Trump.
all right. Now, but you were saying, but to talk about values, constitutional values, you got to talk about real things that people understand.
Exactly.
Well, this is a real thing. Here's
Yes,
a
it
man,
is.
yanked off. He's a citizen, or he was at least here legally until his, asylum status was, could be, rectified or could be heard. But he was pulled off. He was sent to this prison, no charges. have been put forth against him, at least not before the judges in his current hearings. And even though Trump and his DOJ folks insist that here's a criminal, here's a bad guy, well, we don't know. It hasn't been proven. He's been denied due process. Now, is it enough that due process is denied? And this is something that is afforded to everyone. People should be concerned about this.
People seem to be reacting to an instant example of a violation of just a plain sense of justice. Okay, so it now has been understood as a violation of due process. But once again, just using the words due process, right, don't really mean that much at the individual level. Okay.
Well, all right.
What they look at, what people are seeing is that somebody didn't get an opportunity to be heard in a court of law. That is clear. That is very concise. Okay. And it's something that everybody understands. We're all supposed to get our moment to be able to explain ourselves. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
and so rather than discuss it in terms of due process and keep repeating that, you need to connect the concept of due process with specific steps that are there and exist to protect people's rights, to protect people's interests as people protected because they're within the jurisdiction of the United States of America.
But all you really have to say is, look, that could be you. Put yourself in the shoes of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That's all you need.
Nah, that's not, to me, it's not good enough. You
No?
know why?
Yeah.
You know why? You
Why?
know why? Because Kilmar is brown. Kilmar is Latino. And on the other side of the issue is the racist, vehemence that has been connected with this movement from the very start. That's what this is about. At the core, they don't want us here. At the core, they would like to get rid of all Latinos. At the core, they would like to get rid of everyone. I mean, what about birthright citizenship?
Yeah,
what is that about?
Yes, I understand that, and we could talk about that also, because that's another challenge.
Well, unfortunately, the court doesn't look like it wants to take it up until May, which means that they may not say anything about it until June or July.
Yeah, well, that just extends it, and people just say, oh, well, this is the threat that's still there. But to get to your point about how they, you see it in terms of they don't want people of color, I think it's enough, because if people of color see it, they see themselves, and yes, they get it. They get it. But
Trump is making an exception, at least in his words, for blacks, because he says, well, there are people who are slaves, and then we fought a civil war, and so they're protected. But these people who came after that and who came from, and they entered the country illegally, right? They don't deserve that. Okay. Well, but the problem is they didn't all enter the country illegally.
Right.
Many of the people did go through ports of entry. Okay.
Yeah, well,
even under the Biden administration.
Yeah. Okay? Well, that's the real fear, that that this thing will not just extend to the so-called targets, the people who are criminals, but it extends to everyone. And this wasn't just the appellate judge, Judge Wilkinson's order, which said that Trump and the government has to do all it can to get Abrego Garcia back, because he doesn't understand. The government has conceded that Abrego Garcia was wrongly or mistakenly deported. Why then should it not make what was wrong right? And then he says, the idea that the government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims, in essence, that because it has rid itself of custody, that there's nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from the courthouse houses still hold dear. So he's saying that, hey, this is something that can happen to all of us, and we should, I mean, this is legalese, but I think if people read this order that Wilkinson wrote, it's short, it's 6 pages, it's direct. I think
They
you
ain't
know,
gonna read 6 pages. Even people who are already militated against this as a clear violation of this individual's constitutional rights, they ain't gonna read 6 pages. They barely read a paragraph. Okay,
all right.
you are really, I swear, Emil. You're just so freaking naive. Okay, uh,
Hey, the judge said this too. Even the judge, because it seems like it should be obvious, but there was this one line in the judge's ruling. He says, uh, "It is, as we have noted, all too possible to see in this case an incipient crisis, but it may present an opportunity as well. We yet cling to the hope that it is not naive to believe our good brethren in the executive branch," that's the president, "perceive the rule of law as vital to the American ethos. This case presents their unique chance to vindicate that value and to summon the best that is within us while there is still time." The threat is real. A Republican, this is a Reagan Republican who's writing, and a lot of good Republicans on the Reagan side have come out here, come out and spoken out against Trump, and they're part of that Never Trump movement. But these are the
you know how old you got to be of that generation. Just looking at the age factor.
oh yeah,
Okay,
he's in his
they're
80s.
they're very limited numbers of those people, and it's not the among them are the generation that have overstayed
Yeah,
their membership in the U.S. Congress in both houses. Right? We got
and
we
and
got
the
people that are
legislature.
older than me. A lot of the people who are speaking out are my age or older. Right?
Right, right.
How am I going to be this year? 77.
Yeah. Well, look, this is the thing, Dan. We need the constant education of the younger folks. And if instead of education of the real facts, we get the revisionist history, which
Oh,
is
it's
why,
even worse than yeah. I agree that a lot of it is revisionist, but it is but the revisions are made minute by minute.
oh,
That's the
yeah. Well,
problem.
yeah.
That's
And
the
also,
problem.
that's the whole thing about DEI. That's the whole thing about the people who are,
Yeah, and
anti woke.
CRT before that,
And
you
so
know,
what's happening
and
is,
reverse racism before that.
right. And so
Okay,
the people who are of a certain generation who've lived through it, they say, "Hey, wait a minute. I don't
exactly.
want to be naive, but there's still time. But there may not be. Not if the younger people don't want to read 6 pages. Not if
The people that I knew that were, for example, clerks to the California State Supreme Court, which was, in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, it was seen as overly liberal, but at the same time, it got a lot of respect, by the federal courts and in Washington D.C. and the reason and in Congress, and the reason was the way that their application of the law, including constitutional law, both state constitution and federal constitution, was very judicious. In other words, they did it really well. Their explanations really made arch conservatives, like the kind of really panicked radical conservatives, as they call themselves conservatives, they're really right wing radicals, right?
yeah,
Okay, that's what really enangers them is the fact that those decisions and decisions made by the Warren Court, for example, were so well rationalized and so well stated. Okay, so now they're just about doing as much damage as they can to all of that and all
yeah,
of the institutions that have resulted from those interpretations of the law. So you have legal decisions that either say this is constitutional or it is not. And those things that they have found over the years to be constitutional have been eroded slowly, right, by court challenges, or especially since Ronald Reagan, right? Since we're going to, but that was the period when a lot of the decisions that were made by the Warren Court started to be reversed. And the thing with the biggest target on its back was affirmative action.
yeah,
Remember
yeah. Well,
that?
it
Okay.
took a while, but they got rid of that ultimately, and I think that that's going to be the case of everything that you know people have fought for 50, 60 years. You're going to see this reversal, and it's sick. To me, who I've seen the history, it's sickening to see the reversal
Sure.
to a nation that does not resemble the America that we've had the last 50 years. Even
But
the
I think the majority of Americans, and particularly the majority of white people, are kind of happy that affirmative action is done. As you say, it's been eliminated. The reality is it has not been completely eliminated because there are private companies, right,
right.
that are still practicing some form of affirmative action because they find it as a preferable way of doing business because it actually grows their business.
Of course, of course. Oh well, look at America. You look at the demographics. Instead of trying to villainize the people who are becoming the majority, imagine embracing that new majority, and that's what some of those private businesses who are still hanging on to some semblance of diversity. That's what they're trying to do. It makes perfect sense. It is, in fact, common sense, but it's not in the view or the perspective of the Trump administration and their followers.
Because the core motivating factor, okay, is the exclusivity of white supremacy. That's the core motivating factor, okay?
Well, yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think that's the subtext. It's not said out loud. Every time it is, they deny it. That's part of the irony because it's plain to people who have seen, the society change and how it's going backwards in reverse and how it is. And so I I bring this up about Abrego Garcia because that's the crisis we're in, and it really is between the presidency, the executive branch, and the judicial branch, right? The judiciary. We have the Congress, which they've pretty much capitulated to Trump. So they're ganging up on the judges. And when I heard Trump say today, look, I was elected, he said, I was elected, not the judges. The judges weren't elected, but, you know, you know, I don't know how we resolve this. I mean, I've mentioned the term constitutional crisis. A lot of people don't like to use that. But when the courts say, do this, president, do this, executive branch, and the president, the executive branch say, nope, I'm not going to do it, that's a constitutional crisis, right?
It's at least a contribution, a constitutional. How can I put this? Rebellion. It's at
Yeah,
least that. It's a rebellion against the Constitution. The man and all of those people that hold office took an oath. Remember that? And the
right.
oath is to uphold the Constitution. So, one of the questions that the American public should be asked is, do you think they have violated their oath to uphold the Constitution? Yes or freaking no. That's all I want to know from them.
And you know what? Most people would say, who cares? I voted for him. I
I
like
agree.
him.
We
I like him.
this is one of the first times where we're going to agree in strength. You know, okay. And
Yeah,
today,
it's like,
today,
hey, who cares about oaths? Oaths are for horses.
oh no, no, yeah,
No, but they
that's
don't
only
care
if they
about it.
had a really bad lisp.
Yeah, I
You know?
know. But no, but oath, taking an oath. I mean, a lot of people
Well,
say,
what does that say? If they disregard, I agree with you. And so, what does it say when people are willingly disregard that? Right?
well,
You
it's
know,
only because they're used to
I pledge
saying,
allegiance to the flag. Right?
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
What does
and,
that
but,
mean, man?
but it's only because they've seen Trump, you know, uh,
Yeah,
disavow
but
the
see,
oath.
the problem is it's not just Trump. Look at all of the people that have been caught dirty
Mhm.
and escaped punishment because they simply resigned,
Right.
including the biggest,
Yeah.
escapee was Richard freaking Milhouse Nixon.
So,
Okay,
so Dan, what does this say about the immoral nature of America? I mean, it really,
yeah. What do you mean? What does it say? It's proof. It's
yeah.
it's prima facie, right?
Yeah.
Evidence,
Yeah.
right?
I just, this is good that we're having this conversation at Easter time because this is when everyone is at least ironically religious for a couple of days.
Yeah, but they're
And
short on eggs, though. They're
they're
short
still
on
on it.
eggs.
We don't eat
Yeah.
plastic eggs are good enough. Plastic.
I saw some cute marshmallow substitutions. I thought that was kind of cute.
No. But the thing is, the immoral nature of the United States is coming clear. And this is
I
almost
don't know
like
if it's immoral. I would
it's
agree with you if you
amoral,
say yes.
amoral,
Yes, that's it
amoral,
right there.
amoral. I mean,
Yeah.
because look, a lot of people, and if you travel around the world, like to the Philippines and to other developing countries, how you can get around laws by just putting a little extra into someone's hand.
Some 20 pesos behind your license.
And
You offer that one.
and this is part of the thing about. I mean, I'll never forget how I really began to understand the concept of rule of law. Rule of law is this is the law, it stands, right? In America, that was always the case. Other countries, how about this? How about a little
Well,
something?
but that's happening here. That's the whole thing.
Well,
Remember?
that's the thing. It's
Yeah,
happening here now.
one of the things that really angered me, even 40 years ago, was when a white politician, right, stands up, particularly from the southern states and from the Midwest, and they say these people are turning our country into a third world nation, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, dude, we're already there. You've been
yeah.
doing it. You're
Yeah.
corrupt as hell.
Well, Trump is, he wants. See, this is the thing about Trump and Bukele meeting on Monday, which was ironic because Trump wants to be Bukele. Trump wants.
What do you got against the coolest dictator in the world,
Well,
man?
that's
I
the
mean,
thing. Trump wants to
he
be the cool
cool. He
dictator.
cool, dude. He cool.
Well, he's not that. Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, this is Bukele is better than the Turkey guy and better than the
Well, that's just because they're
Hungarian
too
guy.
straight. Yeah, he looks like he makes regular rounds to the local disco.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Bukele, but here is Trump sort of looking on Bukele like, oh, if only I were 30 years younger like Bukele, or
Yeah,
40 years younger
and he
like
was like
Bukele.
that once upon a time, oogling,
Yeah,
oogling,
he was
oogling
like that.
teenage girls.
And this is the problem. Why is this happening to America? What
We
did we
let it
do wrong?
slide. Common culture let it slide. We let it slide. Pop culture let it popularized it, right? Pop culture popularized it. The same way, you know, a friend of mine I was talking to yesterday from my same experience, SF State, all the rest of it, and the strikes, all of the advancement of the concept of ethnic studies, the content of our curriculum, all of that. Okay. And he said, we have handed to the bad people, right, the ammunition to be able to do harm to us. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And that is something that we have not dealt with. And that's what Democrats are having a hard. That's why they can't get their act together. Because
yeah,
one, you have to accept where you screwed up. You have to identify where you screwed up. And one of the biggest screw ups, right, is around gender and sexuality and immigration. That's
yeah.
where it went.
Well,
Okay.
the thing that's problematic is that so you have the ultra progressives who are seen as uh,
Commies.
permissive and commie. And they're the problem,
They're
right?
immoral. They're
Right.
immoral.
They're immoral, and then you have the so-called the Christian, um, the what do they
The
call it?
evangelists,
Yeah,
are you the right side comparison?
right,
Yeah,
right.
the conservative right. Yeah, okay.
And you have the conservative right holding up this moral sense, and yet they are as amoral in the same
They
way.
got the highest divorce rates in the country. All you got to do is go state by state. So, I call them the Bible thumpers. Remember that term?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Well, everyone's trying to have the amoral high ground as
Yeah.
opposed to the moral high
That's why they
ground.
get married 3 times.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Well, at least they get married. At least they give it a shot, right? Now
yeah,
we have a whole generation of incel white boys.
yeah. Well, and that's another part of the problem too.
They
You
don't
know,
get laid, man. I mean,
yeah,
some of these guys are saying, I haven't had sex in a year. And I looked at my wife and I said, holy shit.
well, that I this is the problem, and also
Oh my
thing.
God.
Here's the thing, and this is only going to make misogyny worse because the women are smarter, more powerful, better paid than the men, and so
I've been
there's
saying this for years, dude. I said this in the 70s. I
yeah,
said, look who's coming. Look
Yeah.
who's coming. And it was quick, right? Okay. I've told you on this show several times.
Yeah.
When I started at Hastings, right? Well,
Yeah.
before now it's UC Law, right? UC Law San Francisco. But when I started in law school, we were somewhere around 40%. It was a big deal. They were
Yeah.
celebrating the fact that over 40% of the incoming first year class was women. Okay. 3 years later, when I graduated in 77, it was over 50% women. So it increased by another 10% or so in just 3 years. Okay. So that was pretty clear, even in the 70s, that stuff was changing real fast. And so not only were there more women, right, at all levels of college and university education,
Yeah.
right? So they're going up into the post grad, degrees and everything.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
not only that, right? But they were smarter too.
Yeah. Well, this is the
They
thing.
were smarter. They worked harder. You know.
And we did, and the idea of women's liberation and feminism, it wasn't even. It was just starting in the 70s, but it wasn't a thing. And now,
There was a lot of militant feminism happening. I mean, a few people made it into Congress. Remember Bella?
yeah, yeah,
Bella
Bella,
Abzug, folks like
but that
Gloria
really,
Steinem. Gloria Steinem was like the more vivacious and sexually attractive version,
but
right,
but
of
she,
feminism.
they didn't really hit until like mid 70s, right?
Yeah, mid '70s and '80s. When they took over disco power, basically,
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, I'm just saying that now, I mean, so yeah, it's funny you saw that back in the 70s. There was some, but it's happening now. It's happening. So look, to get back to our crisis at hand. What's going to happen with Abrego Garcia? Trump says he's never coming. He's going to defy, and if he continues to defy, um, he continues to threaten
Contempt,
our
contempt,
constitutional order. Yeah,
contempt,
that's a
contempt charges. What they have to do is isolate who the people are who are most responsible for failing to carry it out, right? And like I said, Trump is going to try and distance himself, and he's going to sacrifice a few people
yeah.
with contempt charges. Now, I spent some time looking up, what the current penalties are, because I believe that they may have changed over the many years that I've been observing this stuff, but it stayed the same. I think there's a max on federal contempt of court, criminal contempt of court. Of max fine is only $1,000. Man, talk about nothing.
No jail time.
Uh, Jail time up to 6 months.
Oh, well, that's
It's kind of
not
puny.
even,
It's kind of
that's,
puny.
yeah, it's
It's
not
kind of
even.
puny, but it would scare the hell out of people, right?
Yeah,
Especially lawyers, because not only could you go to jail, you could have your bar, suspended, your bar license suspended, and then
yeah.
eventually you could, under review by your state bar, have your license revoked.
Well,
So,
let's hope that something happens, and that not just that people will heed the word of what the good judge Wilkinson said, and then also Boasberg has his say on another immigration matter on the Venezuelan, and the use of the Alien Enemies Act, and how Trump sent the Venezuelans in the first place to El Salvador. Hey, this week also the court said it would hear the birthright citizenship case. It's more procedural because, I mean, it's going to hear the case, but it's not going to decide. It's going to see if Trump has, I guess, the right to go forward. But do you think it has a chance of going all the way through to get to, let's decide if this is still going to be the law of the land, birthright citizenship?
I think I've said before on your show
Yeah.
that the court could come up with a parsoning, right, of birthright citizenship, and say that if both parents were legally present, right, and if at least one parent is actually a citizen of the United States, then birthright citizenship could hold. Okay, could hold, but uh, as far as undocumented people, if neither parent was documented upon entry to the United States and they had children, they may be able to deny that.
Yeah. How
And
about
I think that could be popular in the general population. And so, you always have to reflect on how the general public is going to react to these kinds of decisions.
all right? How about how far back would they go? Both my parents weren't citizens when they had me. Would I
Sure,
be
but they were legally present and they entered legally. So I'm saying if the people are undocumented, that means they entered by the Trump standard, by the right wing standard, illegally. Then they're the ones who are the greatest jeopardy, I believe.
okay? All right, all right. Hey, to go back to the Abrego Garcia case, the fear is that Trump will deport or just disappear the homegrown. There's instances where that's sort of happening around the country. Like there's a case in Florida where they held someone, I think he was like 18 or so. They held him for a few hours. They detained him, but he was born here. They let him go. Are we going to start seeing more of that sort of thing where
Yes.
people are
Yes.
detained?
Yes.
I mean, it's just going to happen, right?
Yeah.
If the viewpoint is, hey, anything goes, we can hold you, we can question you.
Well, first of all, even if the police power, the police authority on the ground, right, is simply trying to be fair. Let's make the Emil Amok assumption, that they're just trying to do their job. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
they don't have bias based on race or preconceptions about certain ethnic groups, right, or nationalities. Okay, but they're just trying to do their job. They have to do it with some level of urgency just to prove that they're doing their job, because otherwise they risk getting fired. So if they simply want to hold on to their job, like so many federal employees are facing right now,
Oh,
is
yeah.
the threat that they could just generically be dismissed from their position, and with a phony letter, that's misspelled and everything else, that says you just weren't living up to your potential, man. Too
Yeah.
bad. So, go find something else to do. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess we're going to see more of these stories, and the more that comes up, I think the people will be upset that, hey, our constitutional rights are being evaporated before our eyes under this lawless Trump.
Yeah, well, okay. I agree with you. I agree with you that many more people will be upset, but if you really want to see me, I what have I said in previous shows, right? People have to be touched by the problem. They actually have to be personally affected by the problem, or somebody immediately adjacent to them that they really care about has to be affected by the problem. Okay? And that will help. That will help a lot. Okay? Now I don't even know if that's going to make them change their vote, or
Yeah.
or even come out and vote, right? Because the motivation, the emotional motivation, and I've said again on your show, m- m- on the ground, right? Political behavior is psychological. It's emotional, okay? And
Yeah.
that's what you got to look
Well,
at. So,
well, the fear is real. The fear is real that if you're a person of color and you look like you could be here potentially illegally, you're undocumented, you will be stopped. I mean, I think at times when I've been in foreign countries and I've been
oh
detained,
yeah,
and there's a
it
real
it
fear
it
there.
will it could make you soil your underwear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Well, I didn't soil my underwear, but it was I wasn't sure what was happening
Oh, come
as
on, you
they
can tell the truth, Emil.
well, no, as they held me for like I think it was like 4 or 5
Not
hours.
even a trickle. Not even a trickle. Come on.
No. Well, I had done nothing. I had done nothing. It was really a Kafkaesque experience. I had done nothing, and I was being held in a foreign country, and I was just hoping that the cavalry would arrive soon. And then, as you know, minutes,
That was
hours.
cavalry, not Calvary, right?
I said cavalry. I said cavalry.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking it's still not 3 o'clock here, so
No,
Calvary would be a
past
good.
three. Past
Oh,
three.
is it already? Oh man, we're gone again.
Yeah. So I just think that I don't know. I hope that this sinks in. I hope they read Appellate Judge Wilkinson's uh, his order because it sinks in. You read it. You can Google it. Judge Wilkinson. court order, um, for the Fourth Circuit on Trump, what Trump has to do, and on Trump's Trump's appeal. It was Trump's appeal that he didn't have to do anything. No, he has to do something. He's got to bring Abrego Garcia back.
Well, you could, yeah. You also have to combine that with the the decision by Paula Zinnes, right?
Oh yeah,
Judge Zinnes, and that's direct, on because she is, in Maryland, right?
yeah. Well,
she's
she's
the
the
court
one.
in Maryland.
Yeah, she's the judge, and she says, I want to hear a status report. I want to,
Yeah.
I
Well,
want.
well, I think more importantly, she defined what facilitate means.
Oh yeah, they got to do more.
It's a verb. You have to act positively. You have to act affirmatively, right? You can't sit there passively and say, okay, if somebody gets them out, we'll supply a plane, right?
Yeah, right,
Because
right.
that's what Bondi said, right?
Yeah.
That is not facilitation.
Facilitate. I usually like the term facilitate. But
I do too.
Yeah.
I describe myself as a facilitator.
Facilitator. Yes,
A
yes,
felicitous facilitator.
yes. All right. So now, so the other thing that happened this week, and in the time we have, I want to talk about Harvard because Harvard stood up
They
to
did.
Trump. Trump likes to stand up to the courts,
Right.
but Trump doesn't like it when people stand up to him.
Right.
Hence, all the law firms that capitulate and all the universities and schools that capitulate to Trump, all except Harvard. Harvard was the big exception. Very
Yeah.
proud of that fact that
Yeah.
Harvard stood up because they stood up for all of higher ed. They stood up for not giving in their control in terms of hiring, in terms of what they teach, in terms of admissions. They weren't giving up any control to Trump. And now Trump, not only did he withhold $2.2 billion, but he also said, okay, Harvard, we're going to mess around with your tax exempt status.
Yeah.
That was later on this week. I mean, is that fair?
No, it's not. Neither was, taking away funds. Part of the billions of dollars that he's denying them were actually contractually obligated already to activities that Harvard had undertaken. So essentially, what he's doing is he's violating contract law. Okay,
So
he could be sued. Harvard should turn around and sue him for that. Okay,
yeah.
actively. And then on the other hand, right, the tax exempt status is all based on what Harvard's activities are. And there's three major areas, right, that you get tax exempt status for. And one of them is, guess what? Education. Okay. What's another one? Research. What's scientific? What's another one? Arts and humanities. Okay. Hey, satisfy all three. So what the hell? What's the basis for his denial of tax exempt status? Okay. This is going to be real fun, man, because it's 2 more lawsuits.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. We haven't seen a president this litigious creating this chaos. And then on top of this, you have the tariffs.
Well, I lost your sound. Yeah. I'm not getting a bad report on connection loss. Can you hear me? I guess you can, huh? Yeah. Nope. Okay, I've lost your sound. Check your mic or whatever. Hello. Anyway, yeah. Well, we haven't seen anybody this litigious. I assume that everybody downline can hear me.
Yeah.
But oh, here we go. I can hear you now.
Okay.
We this litigious, but we have to always look at past behavior. I mean, and once again, it's history, right? And his private business history for his entire life, right, is that he sues like crazy. He gets sued like crazy because he doesn't pay his bills, right? Hi, Kathy.
Yeah.
Anyway, your better half, of course. Yeah, actually, she's kind of more like 60%. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah. Who's counting? Well, it's the women again. The women get ahead. It's been that way.
Yeah.
Decades,
So,
So anyway, he's litigious, and so this should not be a surprise. He's just carrying his past behavior directly into his presidency. It's so there it is. And there's even more motivation for this kind of personality, right?
Yeah.
This egomaniacal, now essentially megalomaniacal, right? Because the people
Yeah.
made him megalo.
And yet I will say that the numbers of people, I mean, the poll numbers are showing that people don't like what he's doing on business, what he's like doing
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
economy.
They like him
58%.
on immigration, though. They still like him on
A
immigration.
little bit. But I think when it comes down to when a decision has to be made
Hi,
on whether or
Juanita.
not he's going to go for a third term,
It's Juanita's up too.
yeah, I think he's going to, I don't know if people are off of him. I don't know. It's like this is always the case where people just don't want to quit him. He's like a
Well,
bad lover.
once again, yeah, I think there's some parallels. They made a commitment. I mean, I've seen some of my students, unfortunately, were women who were very accomplished, right? And the one thing that they really wanted more than any of their other accomplishments was to be able to save a bad guy. Okay. So
Oh.
they would get into these relationships with very handsome, very brilliant, but very bad dudes, right? And they'd want to fix them. Okay. And I've seen that so many times in my life. It's pitiful,
They're gonna fit. Well, yeah. I guess I don't know. I just hope that America.
He ain't fixable, man. This guy is freaking nuts. Okay.
Yeah, I just hope America goes through the re-education process and do things like read Judge Wilkinson Porter, and I want them to take the time between Good Friday and Easter and try to correct the feeling of America that is not naive, but that is really at the core about our democracy.
They don't even want to do Classics Illustrated, dude. So that's too long.
Watch Johnny Tremaine on the Wonderful World of Color.
No,
Walt
man.
you need
illustrated books is as far as they're going to go. Not
Well,
Classics Illustrated, but just illustrated, right?
I mean, why should people exert themselves more than their president?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's why they like him. That's
Yeah,
one of the reasons they like him. He's like us. How many times do we hear that the first time we're out, right?
I like a
I like
president.
him because he's like us.
I like a president who doesn't read and can't
He's got an
articulate.
extremely limited vocabulary.
Yeah, a president who doesn't read and can't articulate. That's the president for the people.
Hey, there it is, man.
I just don't like his usurpation of the word common sense.
Oh well,
I mean, he is not a commoner.
Oh,
He's not.
there are a couple of great professors. One who's now at USF, and another that retired from Berkeley, and they used common sense. They describe common sense and use it as the basis to be able to test all of the various and sundry craziness that's part of the mix of so-called media, right? And that Lakoff was one, and Kumashiro is the other. Lakoff was at Berkeley, Kumashiro's at USF, and he came out with at least 3 books in series that use the concept common sense. So they have every right to be insulted, man.
Well, it's an Orwellian use of it, right? War is peace,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Or if hunger is no.
Well, yeah.
War is peace and love is hate. It's all the opposites, and it's just sickening. It's Orwellian, and it makes it hard to be ironic in these times. There's no way.
It makes it even dangerous to be sarcastic.
Oh yeah,
because people think you're being literal.
Oh, yeah.
You can't use figuratism. You can't be sir. I got a shirt, man. It says, it's sarcasm.
Yeah, I'm being ironic. Trump isn't being ironic. He's real. He's for real.
Yeah,
it's not funny.
The irony is in the fact that he's real. That's the irony.
Yeah. Go steel workers. The
That's,
steel
yeah.
industry thing here in America.
I'm gonna
Hey,
bring back industries. You know
yeah,
how long it takes. Even if you take over an old factory, it's still an old factory, right?
oh yeah,
Everything, half of the stuff, 3/4 of it is robotics, right? So you got to train people on robotics, and then you got to install the robotics to make the factory work again, right?
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you have to have supply line, all the rest of that stuff, right? But the people, just like they said, they believed him when he said he going to bring the prices down. Okay, okay, groceries gonna be cheap. Okay, I'm gonna fix it. Okay, and I'm gonna end that damn war in Ukraine. Okay, he goes
Oh,
all of
that's
that
even
stuff.
further away. That's even
So those
further
are just two. Those are just two things, right? So the only thing that they can claim as any kind of success, right, is the fact that there's so few people now crossing the border, and then they're claiming that's because of everything that we did, right? Well, it wasn't the wall, was it? It was
Oh,
because it wasn't the wall, right?
no, it was Biden's website that said, "Come on in. You can sign up online," and they did. And they came over, and then
Yeah, and Holman, did you hear what Holman was saying? No,
no, what did it?
Holman's rationale. Oh, he said, well, the guy was convicted. He said, and people said he wasn't convicted. It was
Yeah,
dicta by the judges
yeah.
based on completely discredited information given to them by a CI, a
Well,
confidential informant, and a detective. And the
and
detective was not only suspended, he was fired.
well,
Right?
this is the thing about the propaganda that the Trump administration puts out. They say, "Oh, he's a criminal. He's going,"
He's
and he,
MS-13, right? And they said, well, but the informant put him in a state where he never was before.
yeah.
Okay,
So,
they connected him with activity in a different state.
so
He'd never been there, and the guy's been clean as a whistle. He's a star freaking union worker, man.
yeah. And this is the thing about Trump. Trump will say, "Oh, fake news." Well, I say, "Fake president. Fake
Yeah,
president."
well, yeah, right on. Well,
Yeah,
34 convictions for fraud.
yeah,
That pretty much makes you a fraud. Okay,
yeah.
legally
So what are
fraud.
we going to do?
Okay.
All right. So Dan,
Oh, can I say one more thing about the Kilmar case?
yeah,
Homan argued that he's a terrorist.
yeah.
He's a member of terrorists. So one, it hasn't been proven that he's a member of the gang.
Yeah,
Secondly, you can't label the gang. When was MS-13 labeled as a terrorist organization?
by Trump.
That's right.
Right.
During this administration since January 20th, right? You can't say we're defining them as a terrorist organization and then go back,
We're backdating.
right,
We're
to
back.
Kilmar.
We're
Yeah,
back.
go back to Kilmar and say he's guilty as a member of a terrorist organization when you have no proof of either past or present membership in the organization.
Look, this
That's
is
called a violation of what? The constitutional prohibition against what? Ex post facto law.
oh,
I
going
haven't heard
backwards.
one. I haven't heard one constitutional expert raise that yet.
Yeah, well, that's because Donald Trump would say, "Well, that's ex post office law. He's not a member of the post office."
Okay.
No, but
Okay,
this is the thing.
that's funny, but it's close to sarcasm, and people ain't gonna get it.
But this is the thing about Donald Trump. He is like so stupid, and people buy it. Stupidity is his cover.
Because they're like us.
No.
He likes us, man.
Well, I'm going to take the Easter season as a time to try to resurrect our feelings for democracy, our feelings for justice, and for the truth, because Donald Trump being the obstacle, not doing anything on Abrego Garcia, saying that he's never coming back. He's a threat to everyone's constitutional rights. I mean, people need to understand that and know that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the threat is clear. I think that a lot of Republicans, the more traditional types, are going to back way off because they know that this is really bad. Regardless of all the election issues and stuff like that, there are some Republicans who really are trying to be principled, even now. Most
Yeah.
of them are the younger crowd. Most of them are either middle generation, 50s and 60s, right? Because they hardly have anybody young except for like Bobert and MGT.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh boy, the MAGA
MGT.
types. Yeah,
Okay.
the MAGA types. Well, yeah.
Ain't that fun?
So essentially, you're talking about 50 plus,
Yeah.
Republicans,
Yeah.
which
But that
boomer.
makes him 30 years younger than, the guys that are holding on to their job.
Yeah, yeah. I
How,
mean, but
how, how old is Grassley? Is like in his 90s?
yeah, and well, Wilkinson, the judge who wrote the appellate judge who wrote the order, he's 80.
Yeah.
And then you have, yeah, it's like everyone who remembers Nixon, everyone who remembers Eisenhower. I mean, Eisenhower's mentioned
Well,
in
even I was a child when
yeah.
the
Well,
Republicans held their convention at the Cow Palace.
I remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that.
You were a baby.
But I remember the Cow Palace was used, and I think of that all the time. The how the Republicans were there, and I remember thinking every time I saw a big act like Prince or U2 at the Cow Palace, I kept thinking, wow, the Republicans were here in 1960. So anyway,
Well, for me, it was even more exciting because the presidential parade went right past my house.
oh yeah, well,
Literally right past my house. Yeah.
hey Dan, before I let you go, the Warriors are playing the Houston Rockets.
Yep.
in the playoffs on Sunday on Easter.
Sunday, yeah.
And I don't know. I know we're kind of big Warrior fans. I'm a little worried about this one because the Rockets are bigger. I usually aren't worried. I'm not worried about that kind of thing, but they are bigger than the Warriors and
Yeah,
younger.
but the Smalls, at least 2 weeks ago, when the Smalls were playing, they actually handled the big guys well.
Yeah, well, it's true, and also they shot better. They shot better.
That's absolutely true. That was one of those. There were 2 games in a row where everybody shot well. Like at least 7 people had like double digits.
Yeah.
Okay, and 5 of them were 20 points plus. That's a good day.
Okay. Well, if Buddy Hield is hot and cold, and he'll can't rely on him. So, but if Moses Moody and Bajemski have good games, then they win. If they don't have good games, it's close and they could lose.
Yeah, it gets tight. And if Butler, Curry,
if Curry has a bad game, forget it.
Green, if Butler, Green, and Curry foul, foul out, you got to hang in there for the whole damn game, man.
Yeah,
don't be picking up 2 fouls in the first quarter.
Well, and I haven't mentioned this, but the play of Jonathan Kuminga is going to be big if he gets.
That's going to be key. That's going to be key. Yeah.
Who knows? He might get in, but he hasn't gotten into the rotation. So,
well, that's up to the Capitan. That's up to Kerr.
Yeah. Well, I like to see Kuminga play, but maybe. I don't know. I don't know. They need him. They need. But we'll see.
I just need him because he smiles all the time.
Yeah, Kuminga.
He smiles all the time. I mean, he's got a positive attitude, man.
He's the only Filipino I know from the Congo. Johnny Kuminga. Kuminga. He's he's got a Filipino last name, Kuminga.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, so
it qualifies 3 syllables. Oh yeah.
So Dan, have a happy Easter. I hope people take my suggestion and read that Wilkinson court order, because it'll enlighten you about where we are in our nation, and as you think about your spiritual sense, think also about where we are as a country. And hey, it's a good time. Easter's a good time. Think about.
Well, I think the biggest thing is the common good.
Common good.
That's what he's talking about, is the common good. Yeah, not enough people, and what we need to be doing is refocusing on the common good, and that would cure a lot. Let me tell you. Just how critical I've been about individualism, right? So on your show, and everywhere else,
we have no sense of common good.
Common good,
because the individual is personified by the president.
Yeah. Well,
right?
in extreme terms, yes.
Yes, Donald
Yeah,
Trump.
in extreme
You know,
terms.
the coin flip. You know, heads I win, tails you lose. I mean, that's Donald Trump's motto. All right, so
All right,
Dan,
dude.
have a happy Easter, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it was once again an exciting and sarcastic time.
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
and
So,
we're getting out in a good time within an
yeah.
hour. All right, there
All
he
right.
goes,
Happy
Daniel.
Easter.
Happy Easter. Don't take those fake eggs. Fake eggs.
Thanks
Down
for
on fake
being
eggs.
here, Juanita and Kathy. Thanks a lot. Good to
Yeah,
see you.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, down with fake eggs. No fake eggs. Don't take those fake eggs. There he goes. Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. Let's get the name right. Yeah, you know, I feel funny. I feel funny about where we are as a nation, and I knew that talking to Dan would make me feel even more confused. No, it's, you know, because he doesn't think that people care. I believe, I think people care. Like the judge said, it's not naive to think that we could save ourselves. I think we could save ourselves. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. See, now I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can, come to a conclusion that Trump defying the court is not a good thing for anyone, for anyone's constitutional rights. So, time to say happy Easter and say goodbye. If you missed any or all of this, go use your finger, go to the front. Check out previous shows. 857, that's a good show. 856, that was a good show. And have yourself a good Easter. If you celebrate, have yourself a good spiritual holiday. If you're, whatever you're celebrating. And so, I'm spreading the love. We close with a little loving kindness, a little meditation, where we send out the love and it comes back twofold. Yeah. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time.